everyone. Welcome to the Law Firm Reboot podcast. My name is Nick Werker. Now, during this podcast, we'll be featuring recordings of panels that took place live at Answering Legal's 2024 Law Firm Summer Reboot Camp. Before we dive into that recording, I wanted to briefly let you know a little bit about the camp's host, Answering Legal. For those not already familiar, Answering Legal is a 24/7 virtual receptionist service that exclusively works with the legal industry. Whenever lawyers can't get to the phone, our highly trained receptionist team is there to make sure they never miss the new client. Answering Legal now even integrates with your favorite legal softwares and provides a free mobile app. As a thank you for checking out our podcast, we're giving you a special free trial offer of Answering Legal, which includes an additional $300 off of services. To take advantage of this offer, visit answeringlegal.com, book a discovery call with our team, and just let us know you watched our Reboot podcast. Please note that this is a limited time offer. Now, without further ado, let's get to our panel. To everybody here, hello everyone, and welcome to Answering Legal's 2024 Law Firm Summer Reboot Camp. My name is Nick Werker. I'm the marketing director here at Answering Legal, and I will be hosting several of our conversations here at camp this week. This is our third year hosting this event, and it's great to be back with everyone again. For those who may not know, this camp will be providing law firm leaders with expert advice on how to reinvent their practice for the second half of 2024 and beyond. Today's portion of camp will be focused on legal tech-related topics, and I get to wipe sweat off my brow because I can actually participate in these conversations a little bit. I can sort of keep up with the smart minds that we've brought with us. And we're gonna start things off by catching up on the latest from the legal software world. Joining me for this conversation is Blake Roberts, Dorna Moini, and Jared Correia. Thank you all so much for being here. So before I dive into asking you and hammering you with questions that are way over my head, I want to get to know everybody a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the places where you work?
Okay, so I am a former practicing attorney. I am not about that life, so I gave that up like 15 years ago, and now I run a consulting business for lawyers and law firms, and also partner with a bunch of bar associations. So I try to help lawyers to improve their business practices, often aligning them with the right technology, like the kind that the other two folks on this call provide. Segue.
I'm going to go with you, Dorna. You're next on my screen.
Wonderful. Happy to be here. Really excited to be here. I feel like I've been here maybe a few years in a row. I don't even know how many years it's been now. But I am Dorna Moini. I'm the CEO and founder of Gavel. We are an automation platform for lawyers. And I'll give you just a little backdrop of how we started. I was a practicing attorney for almost a decade and wanted to build really easy tool. I wanted to build automation into my own practice and couldn't find easy and powerful tools. And so that's why we built Gavel. A lot of customers on our platform are building automation, not just inside of their practice that they're using internally, but actually in client-facing ways. And the next level version of that is building legal products that they put in front of their customers. So we have time to get into that as well.
That's awesome.
Wow. Just quickly, the chat. Dorna, you seeing this? Manish says, I was going through gavel.io today and I fell in love at first sight. Well, I'll throw that on the website.
I fell in love with Gavel at first sight, too.
I love it. I think amazing.
Well, last but not least, we have you, Blake.
Cool. Yeah, thanks. Excited to be here. Blake Roberts. I'm the Director of Partnerships at Lawmatics. We are a legal-specific CRM and marketing automation tool. I am not a former lawyer, but I have been in the legal industry since 2015, starting off at LawPay and then working my way over here to Lawmatics. So very excited to be here. My job is to know what's going on in legal. So hopefully, the three of us, mostly these other two, can help give some really good experience in terms of what's going on.
No worries, Blake. I am not a former practicing attorney either, and I've been in the legal space for about the same amount of time. So we're birds of a feather there. I want to ask all of you to kick this off. What is one recent development from the legal software world that's really caught your attention in 2024?
I'll go. Yeah. So I think for me, it's and it's maybe something that the firms don't necessarily see as much. But I think it's very interesting, and it's something they should be informed of, is just all of the private equity investment going on in the industry right now. I think in a lot of industries, we saw a lull during the pandemic. It was heating up before that, but now it's picking back up, and there's tons and tons and tons of money getting put into the industry, which is a great thing for the law firms in the space because the technology is only going to improve. It's going to get better. There's going to be more companies. So I think that's really interesting. I didn't want to go with the obvious answer of AI because I think there's a lot of good stuff going there. But I think to me, that's been the biggest thing is just really seeing a firestorm of investment money coming into these technology companies in our industry.
So I teased this a little bit earlier, and I agree with you, Blake. I'm sure we'll talk about AI a lot, so I won't talk about that. But what we've seen a lot within the lawyers that we talk to every day is more lawyers trying to build scalable legal technology based practices that are not all just one-to-one services, but are one-to-many services. And what that I think has allowed a lot of these lawyers to do is, especially after everyone went remote over the pandemic and client expectations have changed dramatically and pricing transparency has grown, these lawyers that we've seen have been able to build more profitable practices through alternative business models that still enable them to capture large margins, because there's a lot, even with all the talk about automation replacing all of us, there's still a lot of work that is needed and a lot of disposable income that wants to go towards legal services. So it's just about finding alternative ways to deliver those services.
I have my Clio cup here, everyone, and they just raised, what'd they raise, like 900 million? Is that right?
900 mil. Yeah.
On like a 3 billion valuation, which is pretty good.
I remember when they passed the $1 billion mark like 2 or 3 years ago, and I thought that was a lot.
I always wonder what they sell. Yeah, go ahead, Blake.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, just to add on to that, part of it with it is, you have Clio, so now you have two because Affinipay just recently was valuated and going through some sort of transaction at $3 billion as well. So it's crazy what's going on right now.
Yeah, the companies have never been this valuable before, to Blake's point. And I think the other thing that's interesting, like piggybacking off of that a little bit, is that, pandemic hit, and then all of a sudden there was a lot of funding in a lot of these areas. And then a lot of companies got acquired, too, I would say, over the last, maybe, 2-3 years. And now, you see all these AI startups happening in legal. Yes, that's right. I'm going to break the seal. I'm going to talk about AI. Which I think is really interesting. And I think it's happening on both fronts. So you get these more established companies like Clio, Filevine, Affinipay. Lawmatics is doing some stuff with AI as well. That's happening internally. Dorna, of course, Dorna, you raised your hand, right? You're doing stuff with AI as well.
Don't forget us.
Right. Gavel, right in the bottom corner there.
Dorna is like my main source for information that I get about AI, and
really?
You should be looking for. Well, yeah, because I follow Dorna on Instagram, and she posts the most helpful videos that you could possibly want. Or trust me, I watch them all the time.
Already.
So Dorna, you were playing coy before.
Yeah, you got to follow Dorna on Instagram, man.
I'm gonna go.
Well, I would have to be on Instagram first. Remember, I'm old.
You're on TikTok, right?
Oh, yeah. Follow me on TikTok, where my account doesn't exist. But yeah, I think the AI stuff is great happening in these existing companies. And then, I like the fact that what's interesting to me is that there are now startups that are, built as AI-first companies in kind of the same way that there were startups that were built as cloud-first companies. And that's a very different thing. So I'm excited to see where all that goes. That's probably been the most interesting development to me. And Dorna's videos, that's development number 2 that's most interesting to me.
I'm 99% sure you can watch
How did I do?
Dorna on Instagram without having an Instagram account, too. So follow
I
Dorna's
know. I'm
shameless
just
plug.
messing around.
Also, I'm on
Oh, no.
all the
I'm
channels.
just saying.
Even though I don't have TikTok downloaded onto my phone because I'm afraid, but I do post videos on TikTok.
I think the vibe is now everybody wants to do AI for everything. And it's not the best solution for everything. Well, so that's the question. I guess do you develop this as a solution and try to bootstrap it as much as you can, or are you looking for development money? Like, that's a real question. And I don't know if you've settled that yet, but it's something I would think about a little bit, because there's not one way to do it, frankly.
I'm going to move on from this the topic of conversation and I have a question for Blake. So Lawmatics has obviously been a top CRM choice for lawyers for several years now. Have you noticed that law firms are expecting more from their software platforms than they did during the early days of your company? And how has Lawmatics since evolved in recent years?
Sure. Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think for us specifically, well, I mean, anyone in the industry, right? Like the legal industry, law firms have matured in terms of their tech understanding. We look back at, even 3 years ago, we were joking about how, it's like lawyers don't know how tech works, right? Like we have software products, and that was such a big hurdle. And I think the pandemic pushed a lot of people working remotely, pushed them to adopt technology and understand it better. But I think also just the everyday life, I always call it the Amazon experience, right? Like Amazon changed expectations for shopping, right? There's all of these things out here that change your experience as a client, which then change your experience as a business owner. And so I think more tech savvy. There's a lot more companies in the industry, right? So vendors out there who are serving this market. So there's a lot more introductions to new types of features and things like that. So it's definitely the expectations for any software company in this industry have gone higher than I've ever seen them. In terms of how we're evolving from that, it's all feature based, right? So we have to compete with features and get feedback from clients, right? We're getting feedback. A lot of our product updates are straight from client feedback that we get, which is crazy because once again, 5 years ago, you wouldn't have expected to get a lot of feedback from clients on really, really interesting, robust feature sets. And so I think for any company, it's navigating how do you stay fresh? How do you stay in the game? How do you keep meeting these expectations, but also doing what you do well and making sure that that's still the primary goal?
So this one's for Dorna. Your platform, Gavel, features an AI-enabled workflow builder, which I have seen with my eyeballs, and it is insane. Do you get the sense that lawyers are starting to become more comfortable with using AI-powered tools? And what type of feedback are you getting from the law firms that use Gavel?
Yeah, great question, Nick. So one of the first things that we definitely try to establish for our customers, because our customers are almost all law firms, is what is actually being really transparent about what is happening to their data. And I think once they have that established as a baseline, that makes them much more comfortable in using the platform and using the generative AI features. And so that we share all the information about how your data is not shared with OpenAI. We have special arrangements with OpenAI. We don't use your client data for our own internal training purposes, all of that. That is, I think, the biggest fear for a lot of lawyers, that once you get past that hump, you realize that there's a lot of power in using AI-based tools. So the way that we use AI in our tool right now, and we have a lot more features that we're developing right now coming as well, but right now is a workflow builder. So in order to build your automation, that used to take time, and it still takes time. You have to put some energy into it. But now you can load your perfect documents to Gavel, and what it will do is it will spit out all the suggested questions, all the suggested mappings into those documents, so that you can then take that to getting ROI from that legal tech product a lot more instantaneously than you were before without these types of tools. We announced a few weeks ago, it's probably been like a month and a half now, that we did a survey with a bunch of our customers who had used our tool, but about 700 law firms who are customers of Gavel said that they used generative AI, for the first time using Gavel's workflow builder. So I think some of these tools that make AI accessible and responsible and safe are becoming gateways for lawyers experimenting more and becoming more comfortable with AI more generally and broadly.
That's such a cool feature. This one's for Jared. The tech world moves pretty fast. I'm moving fast too, I know, but I want to make sure that
No.
I love you. And We want to do what we can to help lawyers stay up to date. So, what are some signs that a law firm might be falling behind or acting in a bit of an outdated fashion in the way that they utilize legal software?
Ah, that's a good question. Yeah, so I think let me just say two things first. I promise I'll answer your question. But like, I have people I work with who use both Lawmatics and Documate/Gavel. I still call it Documate sometimes. Sorry, but both really good products, and it's kind of like, so the deal is, if you're a lawyer and you're not intellectually curious about your practice and how it runs, that's a problem. That's maybe the biggest problem. So if you're one of these lawyers who run the law firm in a traditional way, where you're like, hey, things seem to be happening and they're good, so I'm just going to keep doing nothing. Like, that's usually a bad sign. Like, I talk to lawyers and I'm like, how do you make your money? Like, what happens? Do you have a sense of what your marketing plan is? Or like, how do you produce work as quickly as you can so you can get paid as much as you want to get paid? And they're like, I don't know, just kind of happens. Like, if you're going to use technology in an effective way in your business, you need to really think about how that technology is employed. And you can't pass it off to somebody else. Like, it's your law firm, so you got to be aware about how everything runs, and your goal as the business owner should be to optimize everything. That's technology management, but also everything else. So my biggest thing, like, if you feel like your law firm is kind of running you more than you're running your law firm, I don't think that's a good thing. So if you're in that position, I would try to get a handle on the processes I want to use in the firm, and I would try to set goals, and I would try to be aggressive about growing my business, because the opposite of that is stagnation, which you definitely don't want. So I tell people, like, if you're not in your business and can't answer basic questions I have about the business, that's an issue. And just one thing I'll also add to that briefly is, like, God, I probably talk about AI like 75% of the time now. I pine for the days when I didn't have to talk about AI like every single day of my life. But what I will say is that I see a lot of like smaller law firms talking about AI tools, but not really using them. Whereas like a lot of the bigger law firms are being super aggressive about it and building their own tools on the APIs that exist. So if I'm a small lawyer, solo attorney, and I'm listening to this, I would tell you it's probably time to stop talking about the AI stuff and actually start experimenting with it and using it. And that goes back to being intellectually curious about how you run your business.
That was a very existential answer, but I think I got a lot out of it because, well, I'm going to follow up.
It's like a Camus novel over here.
I'm gonna follow it up with, I want everybody to complete this sentence for us. And I'm going to start with Blake. The biggest mistake a growing law practice can make when it comes to utilizing legal software is.
I mean, I'll go with Jared, is not tracking what you're doing, like not tracking your business metrics, right? I mean, we've said it for years. Everybody's talked about it, is attorneys didn't go to law school, didn't go to business school, right? They went to law school to practice. And I think I've said it multiple times, I think that's overdone and oversaid. And I don't think it's necessarily the case now. But if you're spending money on software, if you're spending money on marketing, if you're spending money on anything, which you should be tracking it. And so finding software that does that for you and helps you with it is big. And I think on the note for this question, I actually put be wary of the all-in-one solutions, right? I think a lot of people, it's especially with smaller law firms, it's less expensive maybe than having to buy multiple software. But there's so many integrations now, right? And like, there are products that work better. So I think for me, it's track what you're doing, but also don't fall for the trap necessarily, or at least put it in your research of getting an all-in-one solution.
I'm calling on you, Dorna, and I'm going to make it a clip-worthy layup again. Complete this sentence for us. The biggest mistake a growing law practice can make when it comes to utilizing legal software is...
I think here it is training and not succession planning. So we often see, especially with complex software implementations, you need to make sure that your entire team, whether they are staff, other attorneys, know what you're doing upfront. A lot of people wait too long to do that. And then the second is succession planning. So many of you law firm owners might be setting up systems that you know really, really well and that you think you're going to be holding on to for the long term, making the tweaks to. But you want to make sure that if you decide to leave and you have other people on your team who need to take that over, you have someone who's designated for that, because there's a lot of work that you put into building really amazing systems, and you want that to be able to continue with the firm.
One more time, teeing it up nice and easy. Ready? Complete this sentence for us. The biggest mistake a growing law practice can make when it comes to utilizing legal software is
buying software without fully understanding your law firm needs. This happens all the time. Like, people just buy stuff and then they launch it, and then they'll be like, how do I automate a workflow in this software? And I'm like, bro, I have some terrible news. You can't do that in this software. And they're like, oh, so that's why I paid so little for my subscription. Like, stuff like this happens constantly. And then the problem is, you've got a software that you're using, that you've launched, that you've committed to, that you spent time on, and now you got to be like, do I buy the other thing that I bypassed before, or do I use a billion workarounds to use this software that I don't really need and doesn't fit my firm? I see this happening all the time. So this goes back to the intellectually curious thing. And, it's funny. People talk about like being a zealous lawyer from the terms of like competency and ethics. But like, I think you should be zealous in the way you use your software. Like, if you're going to go through the trouble of buying a software product, like, figure out at a granular level what you need it to do for you. Like, if you want to run a workflow, build out the entire thing. Don't skip steps. And then figure out if the software that you're buying is going to actually be able to do that for you. So it's a planning thing more than anything else. Understand how your law firm processes work, and then buy software that aligns with that, and don't guess, because everybody guesses.
I love that answer. I personally hate my CRM, and we're switching to a new CRM. And just the thought of
Lawmatics. Sorry. Go on.
Just the thought of setting up all my workflows again is just daunting, and then there's extra stuff that I have to add on, but at least like I know what I need. I'm not just buying a tool that's gonna I can't imagine buying a tool and then being like, how do I automate a work? Like, no, you need to know your processes before you actually buy, which is, Blake, you look like you have something you want to say on that note.
Yeah, I do, because I think this is such an important conversation, right? Because I think a lot of times, and this goes for this is word of warning for legal vendors as well as the law firms, is we don't help with the sentiment, because as legal vendors we're trying to sell, right? But like our marketing, I think so often law firms will look at software as the solution, as the fix, right? But reality is, it's the tool used for the solution that you've already created, right? You need to figure out what your problem is, where your deficiencies are, and find software that you can use to help it. But the software itself is not the Band-Aid, right? And so I think have your automations, have your business workflows written out, whether it's on a piece of paper or a spreadsheet or whatever. Know what you need, and that makes buying software so much easier, because then you know the questions to ask. But it also, from the vendor standpoint too, speaking to law firms coming in, it's like, it helps streamline that process that nobody wants to do, right? The setup, right? Half the time with setup, it's, you don't know what your workflows are or your processes. And so having all of that done, it should be the very first step with any law firm if they're looking at buying software.
Yeah, I 100% agree. A lot of times people come in and they really just don't know exactly what their requirements are. And we see this often. It's funny because we were talking about how everyone wants an AI tool. We see this people coming onto our platform saying they want, and again, making the distinction between AI and generative AI tools. So they come onto a demo with us and they say, I want an AI drafting tool. But they don't really realize that what they've actually described is not generative AI, but it's like typical rules-based automation. So really just about sitting down, putting together like a requirements document before you start looking for software and before you start getting on demos with people. It's really important. Yeah. So +1 to both Jared and
Okay, I have the coolest segue to that answer. What are some of the more interesting things that you've seen law firms do with software automation these days that perhaps our campers can draw some inspiration from? I might have to call on somebody, but you all look very pensive.
I'll do it.
So, all right, go ahead.
So I get one of the things I'm really can we do AI again? Are people going to hit me if I do another AI thing? I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it.
You just said you didn't want to talk about AI.
I know. But then I get
Eli.
into it. Like I
You
get
wore the
revved
Hawaiian
up.
shirt. The Hawaiian shirt. Hawaii has AI right in the name.
It's true. It's true. But is it generative AI or something else? Which is, by the way, I just want to put a pin in that. Like Dorna makes a good point, which is when most people talk about AI now, they talk about generative AI, which is like ChatGPT. But there are tons of different kinds of AI. So definitely educate yourself on that. I have one of the things I'm really interested in. There are a ton of potential applications for that. Nobody's really done it yet, and that's not a slight against these technology companies because the implementation of this technology is relatively new. But I've got a client of mine who has built an AI billing engine using a combination of Notion AI, which is a project-based management tool, and MyCase, which is a case management software. And it is beautiful to watch. And what he did was really clever. So with AI, you can prompt it to do certain things. So he took the ABA book, How to Draft Bills, Clients Rush to Pay, which is like this famous ABA book written by Jim Calloway and Jay Foonberg. And he told the AI, I want you to draft my bills as if you were the author of this book, which is a super clever use case, right? So he factored in all his billing codes. He factored in all his billing descriptions. Now he's got all these shorthand notes that he pops into Notion, and it'll generate bills, which he ports over to MyCase and then sends them out. I think that stuff is going to be built into case management software at some point, but we just didn't want to wait, so we built it ourselves. So that's a really awesome use case, I think.
I love that. I can go next unless if you want
Dorna,
to.
yeah, go for it. No,
Yeah,
yeah.
so I love when lawyers build tools that take end-to-end processes and really combine all the different tools that you could to help make your own life easier and make yourself the quote-unquote lawyer on a beach, probably wearing something similar to what Jared's wearing. So one of the examples I'll give is a family law lawyer who I've actually seen a few of these, these like online divorce platforms. And so we had a family law lawyer who built an online divorce tool for their clients to go through. And not only did it take them through videos about explaining through the whole divorce process, generating all the different documents that they needed to at every phase of their case, but it also connected over to this tool called Lob, which is a direct mailing, like a paper snail mail tool. Through Zapier. So what they did is they went through that entire process. They collected payment from their client, and then for any section of the matter where they needed a physical document to be sent to either the court or the opposing party, they did that through passing it over to Zapier and then sending out the snail mail. So I just love that combination of tools to make an end-to-end platform that makes the lawyer's life easier, helps them generate more revenue, and also makes the customer's life a lot easier.
I love the irony of using automation to send a physical letter, not
Right?
like an email. Yeah.
All right, so I guess it's on me. So I think for me, it's, automation, interesting things in automation. I think it's still the simple stuff, right? It's still the stuff that we all who built automation products wanted to see at the beginning. It's client communication. And Lawmatics, we live on kind of that pre-hire side. So we see a lot of the vetting out leads, right? You think of a high volume firm who's getting tons and tons of leads coming in, letting things slip through the cracks. I think, that's kind of table stakes at this point for automations is having those, basic things. But I think the firms who are doing it the best, similar to what Dorna said, is they're automating the entire workflow, especially if you think of a very transactional, very, cookie cutter practice areas like estate planning or things like that, where everything's going to be almost exactly the same for each new client coming in terms of what you need, the information. But I think taking it one step further, being able to automate things and questionnaires and conflict checking to make sure that by the time you're actually having a conversation, this is not going to be a waste of your time, right? So being able to automate that entire process from they clicked the link on your website to learn more or they called you to getting to the point where okay, now you're actually spending billable hours talking to someone. Are you going to find out that they're not basically disqualifying the lead, right? So I think being able to put it into automation where you're not wasting time, but then I think too the client experience of just not having to do anything, but still that client feeling they've been communicated with, they've been talked to. So I think client communication and that automation, as well as just vetting out, certain things and making sure that you're not wasting your time is the biggest use of automation, which sounds, as I said it out loud, it sounds like the most obvious statement for automation is not wasting your time. So I apologize for that because that's pretty much the definition of automation.
I think we get lost in I need to automate all of these things, but I like how you sort of encompass that we're automating it so that I automate so that I don't introduce human error into my workflows, honestly.
Right.
But if you sort of take a step back and figure out why you're automating a specific task, that can be really important, because if you're just automating it for the sake of, and it needs your eye on it before, like, I'll give you a good example with the snail mail thing, right? One of the things that I have automated in my business recently is I had a feedback loop for like an advertising engine. And every time a conversion happened, it would send a report back to the advertising engine. A conversion happened. But what I didn't realize was that I get a lot of erroneous leads in my business where people will think that due to the name of Answering Legal that I answer legal questions. And so every time that conversion happened, it would feed that transaction back through the loop. And now I had to set up something in place where I have a qualifier, right? So I had to automate this as well, where when it reaches a certain stage in my business, it's a qualifier. But it would be the same for sending like a snail mail document. I want to make sure that all of I keep calling it snail mail because you did, Dorna, but I want to make sure that this person actually needs this document before it goes out, right? I don't want to just automate it willy-nilly and then I have this automation running wild without my eye actually on it. So I thought that was a very actual, thoughtful answer, Blake.
Yeah. Can I change my answer to the biggest mistake? It just came to me. I think
Yes.
the biggest mistake law firms make is AI and automation is not an excuse to be lazy. It's empowering. Like, it should be empowering. It's sure you can have the beach time and spend less time in the office, but I think so often people think automation is going to replace, an employee, right? You can let your office staff go because now you have everything automated. That's not the case. It's not an excuse to stop doing things. It's a tool to go be more efficient with what you're doing and expand.
So I want to ask another question, and I'm going to go in reverse order again. But can you talk a little bit about how law firms can use software tools to improve their client experience? Yeah, that's a Blake question.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I didn't want to be so crass, but yeah.
For sure. No, that's good. Yeah, I mean, think about it, like if you're even a small law firm, right? You probably have, at minimum 200-300, and as you get higher, more attorneys, you have thousands of clients, prospects, former clients, things like that. As the attorney, they're one of 1,000, right? As the client, you are potentially the most important thing going on in their world right now, whether it's a divorce, whether it's immigration, whether it's, criminal offense, like you are, like they need to hear from you, right? They need to be no balls dropped, anything like that. They need updates. And it's almost impossible, right? When you get to a certain size firm to make sure that you're staying in contact and everything like that. So I think the biggest thing for client experience is being able to automate these tasks. You don't want to replace the human element of it, like we were talking about. Like, you still want to be in communication with them. So maybe it's, you're not automating every single piece of communication sending out, and you're setting some tasks to be done with it. But I think one of the most powerful things that software can do now with automation is keeping the client in the loop, right? Keeping them updated. I mean, even as simple as like if you have 10,000 or 5,000 older, like previous contacts, is set up an automation and send them an email on their birthday every year, right? Like, the other thing too is keeping your previous clients happy and all of these things. It's such a necessary thing for referrals, for good reviews, for winning cases, things like that. It's being able to use software to keep communication absolutely update live 100%. I mean, we live in an era where everything is happening in our face. Something happens across the world and we find out a minute later online. So that is the client expectation, is they want to know immediately when things happen. And so being able to set up automation and use software to do that, where they may know before you do, because something happened, they got your system updated and it sent them a notification. And so now they feel taken care of. So I think that's just super important.
What do you think, Dorna?
Yeah, I 100% agree with everything Blake said. I would also say that part of that experience for the client is that really makes them feel like they got a good outcome, no matter what the actual outcome of the case ends up being, is them feeling like they were empowered throughout that process. So a lot of clients, whether they might have a bad case or they might have a good case, and no matter, they obviously want a good outcome for you, but they also want to be participating in that process, staying informed and understanding what's going on. So if you can use technology to educate them while they're going through that and potentially take the load off of yourself. So this is why I talked a little bit earlier about like having videos, having images that explain things that can really replicate your process without you needing to spend your very expensive billable hour time explaining that to them directly. That's a scalable way to have that type of direct client impact. And then on top of that, a lot of clients these days are expecting from their lawyers the same things that they expect from other software solutions and other ways they interact with things in the world. They're used to being able to go on DoorDash and order something very seamlessly. They want to be able to do things on their own time, asynchronously, as much as they can. So while that's not all clients, that's something to consider when you are deciding on what your entire client attorney process is.
Brad has asked a question that I think is actually very important for this conversation. So can you guys please mention some different tech that lawyers can buy and what tasks they can perform for us? For example, what is good for drafting documents, what's good for research, etc.?
I mean, I could name.
You're the unbiased one.
Yeah, that's true.
I could name tech across like so many different categories. I have whole presentations on this. All right, let's start from the top. Stop me at any point. Law practice management software, Clio, MyCase, Rocket Matter, FileVine, CRM software, Lawmatics, Lead Docket, Law Ruler. Outside of legal, you got things like Pipedrive, ActiveCampaign. If you want to get real expensive, Salesforce, HubSpot, productivity software, Google Workspace, Microsoft 365, accounting software, QuickBooks, Xero, task management software, Notion, Taskade, legal boards, Trello, Asana, Basecamp. Stop me at any point. Again, I can keep going. What did he say? Research, Westlaw, Lexis, AnyLaw, Fastcase. What else we got? Bloomberg. What was the other category? There was another category in there, wasn't there?
Oh, it got moved.
There's literally thousands of legal software. Like, we don't want to do this for 20 minutes, I promised you.
Drafting documents.
Document drafting. Well, Gavel, right?
That's what I was thinking.
We got also like, Clio Draft, formerly Lawya. We've got Wealth Counsel, Elder Counsel for estate planning attorneys. That's owned by Leap now. You've got Best Case if you're doing bankruptcy stuff. You got what else do you have? You got DocketWise if you're doing immigration. Like there's Hot Docs. Net Documents does some AI workflow stuff now too. There's like a ton. This is like, honestly, this is one of the reasons why people reach out to me, because they'll Google this stuff and they'll be like, there's so many choices. What do I do? And then I'll give you the secret sauce. I try to walk them through the process that we talked about earlier, which is like, all right, you want to do document drafting. What do you need it to do? Like, what are the specific things you want the software to do? And then you align those questions to the demos. You start to talk to people. Maybe you talk to other lawyers that you know who are using different types of software. But the fact of the matter is that like between now and when I started doing this in like '08, there's so much legal software that's out there now, so much more, that it's become only harder to make the choices.
It really, I'm not going to plug any softwares because I'm biased, but I really would double down on what Jared said and what we've said a few times here, which is know your requirements before you go in, because all of these, Jared's described several softwares in several of these different categories, and they're all different in very important ways. And there may be reasons you might want one over the other in all of those different categories. Like I'm an expert in document automation, and some of those tools are for very, very simple documents. And some of those tools are for very robust documents where you want lots and lots of logic. And so you need to know where you're going to be at in order to choose the right product for yourself.
Yeah, right. Even on the document automation side, you want to know, like, are you going to rely on your existing templates that you have to build up? Or are you going to want a software that's going to provide templates for you? Do you want a mix of those things? Like, you got to know this stuff going in.
Definitely.
Like, you wouldn't go to a car lot and be like, yeah, automatic, standard, doesn't matter. Just give me a car. Like, you would never do that.
In the same breath, if you were running a growing law practice today, what's one software-related decision you would make to improve your day-to-day life? I know this is a loaded question for my former attorney friends here.
It's a great question. I'll kick this one off. I'm feeling myself right now. So if I was starting a law firm, first of all, you'd all be screwed if I was starting a law firm, because it would be an amazing law firm. Second of all, what I think I would do is I would probably have Slack as like one of the first technologies I chose, especially if we're talking about a growing law firm where I've got staff. Like, I don't want everybody on my team being in my email constantly. I want my email to be sort of a mission critical tool where I'm talking to other attorneys who are referral sources, where I'm talking to clients. I want to offload all those internal communications to a different space that I can organize in my own way, that I can access when I want, rather than being interrupted all day long and never getting any projects done. That would actually probably be the first software I'd choose, outside of like the table stake stuff.
Okay.
So I would, as the first software, this is a tough one. So I actually built Gavel as a result of my own practice. So I think document automation really would be the first place I started, especially if you're starting a very small firm, or like you're the first person starting it, because it's the best way to be able to scale up yourself and have technology do more of the work for you. If I'm not going with the document automation, I would say something to be able to take my client information in an easier fashion. So I see so many firms, and I hope it's not many of you on this call here, but firms who still send out PDFs to clients, asking them to download the PDF, fill out the PDF, and send the information back. There's a lot of opportunity for changing up practices if you are one of those firms. But that's one of the main reasons that we see clients of law firms not continue with the law firm, because they just don't think that process is going to be seamless after they get that initial PDF form intake. So the easier that you can make the onboarding process for the client and the data gathering process for the client, the better. So I think the client intake would be the other one that would be sort of very, very top on my list.
To me, Jared and Dorna, what they've said is exactly right. And I love the client intake plug. I think that is crucial, because I think a lot of times you hear firms that, well, we don't have an intake problem. It's like, okay, well, do you know how much you're spending on marketing? Do you know what your client acquisition cost is? So the segue to what I'm saying is, I think finding reporting, making sure you have the reporting that's necessary to do all of these things that we talked about in terms of scrutinizing your business practice and getting your workflows, making sure you have not just default reporting, but customized reporting tools that you can create specifically to your needs, so that you can track things and make sure that you're doing everything right, and doing everything in an efficient manner. That's going to help you do everything from spend more money to save more money to get rid of this software or go buy this software. But at the end of the day, if you're not tracking any of that stuff, or you're not keeping up to date with it, you're not going to know. And so I think reporting tools are really important. But more important than that is customized reporting, and being able to customize and do the things that you need, so that you're not just getting, fluff reporting and stuff like that. You need data that is accurate to your firm.
So we're getting close to our time limit here, and I always like to end up these conversations with an eye on the future. So, Jared, can you tell us what you'd like to see next in the legal software space? And then can Dorna and Blake, can you give us some insight on what's next for Gavel and Lawmatics?
What I'd like to see next in the legal software space, what's on my wish list? I would like to see more software companies aligning workflows with client notifications more directly. And that's happening to some level, but not a lot of software companies are doing that necessarily. If I've got a second wish, I would like to see some more sophisticated billing tools available. So they go like maybe 80% of the way of where they need to go, but I'd like to see them get 100% of the way there. So for example, I got clients that I have that do evergreen retainers. So they are basically like clients are refilling their retainer every month. And that's a great way to collect money because you don't necessarily have maybe any accounts receivable. But softwares will allow you to get a notification that your client owes you money at the end of the month. But then you still have to go through this whole manual process to collect it. That whole thing should be automated. So I guess if I had a wish, Christmas in July, it would be those two things.
I just had to look at my calendar to see if you were right, if it was July. I don't even know what day it is.
I know. It's almost the end of July, though.
So, Blake, what's some insight you can give us on what's next for Lawmatics?
Yeah, I think for us, it's we want to continue to be and really push the envelope in the industry as well as everyone should be playing nice with each other, right? And what I mean by that is from a technology standpoint, if you're a law firm, I talked about the all-in-one solutions earlier. I think that seeing more open APIs with software, right, where products can build onto each other, and you have this network of I use these 5 products, and historically they haven't talked to each other, but now they do, right? Because I think you want to use products that are gonna work best for yourself, but I think you also need to make sure that they're communicating, right? So if you're using a CRM and a case management system and a document automation system, they should all be talking to each other somehow, right? And so I think what we're doing at Lawmatics is really pushing the envelope and saying we want to be kind of this platform where everybody, no matter what you use in terms of case management or any of these other things, you can use our product in conjunction. And I think we're building out kind of this open platform. We want to see more integrations in the space with all of the different software companies. It's massively important.
I'll go next. I love that answer, Blake. I know we have quite a few customers in common who are using Gavel and Lawmatics together. So definitely love when we have other softwares that our customers are using that are easy to integrate, that allow the data to move back and forth between them seamlessly. The other thing that I would say that we are working on right now that we find really, really powerful is AI-enabled intake. So right now, what you do with most, any kind of software that's intake or document automation is clients will input their information directly inside of the system. But we're working on some features that will allow you to actually pull data from other systems without needing to directly input that data into specific fields and auto-populate that. So we're really excited about that and how that's going to dramatically shift the speed at which lawyers can do their work and clients can get to good results.
That's really cool. So for everyone, if our campers want to follow or continue following your work and connect with your company further, where do you recommend they go? And I'll start with you, Dorna.
I am, as was mentioned earlier, I have social media channels everywhere. I am Dorna_at_Gavel. And I usually talk about tech topics for like a minute or two that hopefully you guys will enjoy. You can also all email me at dorna@gavel.io.
You're up, Jared.
So I got a website, redcavelegal.com. You can send me an email at jared@redcavelegal.com. I'm on some of the socials. I tire of the socials, but I'm on LinkedIn a lot. And I have a bunch of podcasts. So probably the main one is Legal Toolkit on Legal Talk Network. You can listen to that on my thoughts on legal tech and whatever else I want to throw in there.
Yeah, and I'm on LinkedIn, or email me at blake.roberts@lawmatics.com. Don't look me up on Instagram unless you just want to see a bunch of pictures of my kids. I don't do a lot of work stuff on there, but we are very active on LinkedIn and post a lot of good content. And we have a lot of stuff on our website too, if you want to go in and look at that.
My Instagram is just my dog, so I totally understand that. But that is all the time we have for this discussion. I'd like to thank Blake Roberts, Dorna Moini, and Jared Correia for joining me today.